This is the Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20 vision cast module, or whatever you want to call it, called the Great Commission. So we've changed a couple things that I think make a little bit more of an impact when we ask the question. So I'm going to flip over to my document camp and we're going to jump into this training module. All right. So the first thing you do is everyone has a sheet of paper and we want to make it vertical. And what you're going to do is you're going to put at the top, there's a lot of ways you can do this. I hope that focuses. There we go. I want you to write Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. All right. And if you want to just put a little box around that, that might help too. All right. So you have somebody read the passage, or if somebody in the group, this happens periodically, actually knows it by memory, which is great. You're like, great. So we're going to take that verse and we're going to break that verse down into really bite-sized segments. And we're going to use little symbols to break down the major concepts of Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 to 20. Just a massive, significant, important passage for all Christians everywhere they've ever lived. So in verse 18, the first thing we see is Jesus says, I have authority. Huge concept. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a crown that represents a king, and a king has authority. All right, so put the word authority right there. And then next to it, you're going to write yes or no, just like that. We're going to come back to that at the end. And then he says, I have authority, therefore go. So we're going to put an arrow just like this. Go. Right. And he says, go. It's a biggie. And then after that, he says, make disciples. So what we're going to do is this is kind of the multiplication or symbol of making more. It kind of looks like a pyramid scheme, but just could put the phrase make disciples under that. Oops. Just put that too close there. You get the picture. Make disciples. All right. And then put yes or no. All right. The next thing we do is I have authority over heaven and earth. Go, therefore, go and make disciples of all nations. So we're going to do a circle and then just a line, just a plus, and put it just like that. And then we're going to say all nations. And then put yes and no. All right. And then after they said all nations, then he says, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So we're going to put three little wavy rhymes representing the three names in which we're baptized in: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then I want you to put the word baptize underneath that. All right. And then put yes and no. All right. And after baptize, he says, now I want you to teach them uh, to obey. Um, and you can put obey or observe. Um, the King James says observe, which I like because you learn uh, or you learn to obey through observation and its cause. So, but either or, you get the picture. Teach to obey. That's a different way of teaching. And then lastly, I want you to put a heart right here and just put presence. Who wants the presence? Okay, and then put a yes or no. All right, very simple, right? Now, what I would want you to do at this point, I want you to turn to your buddy and I want you to go back through Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. Just have them, hey, the first thing we see is authority. Then he tells us to go, so forth, and go all the way. Go with your buddy and just repeat. Go back through and train them on what you just did there. All right. So that to take just a few moments, not too long. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then you come back and we're going to evaluate ourselves on where we are in terms of obeying these directives. So the first thing is, does Christ have total authority in your life? He can tell you what to do wherever. Is there an area of it? Does he have total authority? Now be honest with yourself. Yes or no? Okay, so you answer yes or no. I'm just going to, just for the sake of playing along here. Now, is there a place in your life right now I can point to where you are going to lostness? You're going out, finding lostness, interacting with it, and sharing the gospel. Is there a place in your calendar I can point to right now? Not theoretically, not, as you're going, but as I can, is it yes or no? Be honest with yourself. Are there people that I can point to in your life that you have made disciples of? That, I mean, social security numbers. I can look at this person and say, this person is making disciples because of your investment in them. Yes or no? Are you going to other peoples that do not look to you? Now, I realize sometimes that's intentional, but are you interacting with people, having spiritual conversations with people that are from other nations? Yes or no? Right now, not are you willing, but are you? Yes or no? Have you baptized anybody in the recent past? Have you personally baptized? Because that's what it says here. Yes or no? Are you currently teaching somebody how to obey the scriptures? Yes or no? Do you have the presence, or do you want the presence of God on your life? Yes or no? It's a very simple process, and it's a very convicting one for myself and for anybody. And I don't want to have a lot of no's on that. And so at the training, what we do at this point is like, well, this is what we're going to do today. And so what I want you to do is I want you to draw a line right down the middle, just like this. Okay. And I want you to put the word today. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to find out if Christ has total authority in your life. So we're going to touch on that today. There's going to be some actual tests to see that. We're going to actually go today. We're going to go somewhere. We're going to move. So we're going to touch on that today. We are going to show you some initial, at least initial lesson on how to make disciples. So we're going to go to that today. We're going to do a little bit of that today. Are we going to go to nations? Possibly we might run into other nations as we go. We hope. I'm not going to show you how to baptize or necessarily get into the nuts and bolts of that. That's for a later lesson. We can't dump everything on you today. Um, we are going to show you a lesson on how to teach people to obey. And I believe that we are going to have the presence of God on us because we're going to do some activity that we can't do without Him. So today, just today, in the next 5 to 6 hours, we are going to touch on, I guess, 2/3 to 3/4 of the directives found in Jesus's final command to his disciples. That's a very efficient day. All right. So that's one of the things we do with this. The other thing you can do with this is, let me just turn this over. And so again, we've done the yes and no. This is another thing you can do. You can put the line down the middle. All right. And once you're done with this, is just act like all the symbols right here. We put a 98% right here. And we say that 98% of Christians will never go and share the gospel, will never make a disciple of one other person, will never baptize somebody. 98% of believers in the North American context, by their own admission, will never do some of the core functions of making a disciple. And you wonder why we're declining at such a high rate. So the reason we have such a high failure rate, I believe, among believers in the North American context is that we are unwilling or unable to answer four simple questions. The first question is why? Why should I share the gospel and make disciples? Now, Jesus said that in the Great Commission. That should be enough in Matthew chapter 20. But there's actually other reasons, other compelling reasons. The second question I have to answer is, who do I share the gospel with? Who do I make disciples of? I mean, I'd love to know who these people are. I mean, do they have a red X on their bag? Where do I find these people? So I'm gonna put a question mark name. And then the third question we kind of have to answer is, what do I say to them to begin this process? Come to church, read the Bible. What do I actually say to kick this process off, to get it started in terms of making disciples? And then the last question we ultimately have to answer: when am I going to do this? When is this going to fit into my calendar? I mean, that's just a reality. And so, what we have here is the first lesson of discipleship. Let me just put this right here. And we call this the 411. Four questions on one sheet of paper in approximately one session. So we're going to give you a lesson that addresses almost all of the deficiencies of the Great Commission. So that, in an essence, is our vision module in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. You can do a couple things in terms of, you can say, hey, today we're going to touch on these things. You can go through and kind of a checklist, or you can flip over and use it as an introduction to the first lesson of discipleship, which is the 401, four questions on one sheet of paper in one session. I hope that makes sense. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email me or whatever you want to. We can dialogue about it.